Welcome to the All Things Nintendo podcast. I'm Brian Shea from Game Informer, and this is a weekly podcast to discuss all the biggest news and games from the world of Nintendo. We finally got the onslaught of Nintendo news that we've been waiting for in the form of our first Nintendo Direct, so naturally you know we're going to cover all of that news in today's episode. I also have some impressions that I will actually mix into the flow of the news as we go here. Joining me to talk about all of that and a little bit more is former Game Informer video producer and the man behind the terrific podcast and content network over at MinnMax. It is Ben Hanson. Ben, welcome back. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing great. I'm honored that my debut for All Things Nintendo is also the biggest event of the damn year here for Nintendo. It's huge.
Yeah, what a direct presentation that they had yesterday. Like I went in with kind of like tepid expectations because they said like, hey, it's going to be games in the first half of this year. I'm like, all right, so we got like Kirby and the Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe and Tears of the Kingdom, I guess, and they brought the big guns, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And like before the Direct, I was going back and looking at like February. Let's look at those previous years for the Nintendo Direct. Then you realize like, okay, last year they revealed Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Year before that, they revealed Splatoon 3, I believe. So like February is always a big one. I think this show just got better and better as it went throughout it.
Oh, absolutely. We will get to all of that in just a moment. But Ben, I know you've listened to at least a couple episodes of this show.
Hey, nay. I would say I've listened to every episode, but maybe like 3.
Wow.
I think I skipped one that was like a buyer's guide, and then I felt bad because then I found out that Margaret was on that one, and I like Margaret, and it's cool that you have her on. I'm like, damn it, I feel bad for skipping a Margaret episode now.
Well, she's on a few other episodes as well.
I know, she's great.
Yeah, she's awesome. But you know the tradition then, which is it's your first time on the show, so we need to do first Nintendo game, favorite Nintendo game. So you know the drill here. What was the first Nintendo game that you remember playing that kind of like made you start falling in love with this company and the games they put out?
Now, do I have an option for not falling in love, or just anybody in this podcast you assume has fallen emotionally in love with a corporation?
Well, I just assume that like everybody who is a gamer has some sort of affection for Nintendo, right?
Yeah, I do. I'm a weirdo though, where the first Nintendo console, like I'm 35. I think we're the same age, Brian, right?
Yes, I turned 36 in like 2 weeks.
Quit bragging.
Getting up there.
The first Nintendo console that I bought was a GameCube, where I was really late. Like, I never owned a Super Nintendo, NES growing up or anything. Couldn't dream of affording some fancy hardware like that. And so I have a weird one where basically in general, I just want to say, I kind of fell in love with Nintendo later in my life. So I feel more proud of my fandom because it's like, this isn't based on the fact that I soaked my childhood in Super Nintendo juices from the TV. Like I really learned to appreciate them as an adult, Yeah. But so I have a weird one where my first Nintendo game technically was a Coleco game, but technically it's a weird fusion where it was the Coleco handheld version of Donkey Kong.
What?
Do you know this thing?
No.
Look up Coleco Donkey Kong. It's just like a big chunky beast. Does that look familiar to you? Have you seen this weird handheld? It's kind of like a glorious Game & Watch, imagine like a bigger version of the Game & Watch with like a hood on it.
Oh my God. Yeah, I see Donkey Kong electronic game for sale on eBay.
Yeah. So that was it. It blew my mind. I played that so much as a kid, and I didn't even think I realized that there was like an arcade version of Donkey Kong. So then later in life, it's like, what? That old Coleco game that I used to play all the time got like a remake? This thing looks amazing. It was all I needed though. In fact, deep cut for Game Informer here.
Ooh.
The jump button made like this terrible like meow sound.
Yeah.
And that is the sound that I literally captured from my old childhood Donkey Kong. And I put it at the beginning of old replay episodes. Like when it's like dun 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 boink, like that boink sound is the literal sound that I captured from my old childhood Donkey Kong.
Look at you out here sampling old video game things.
Yeah.
You'd fit right in at MagFest.
Oh, thank you so much. I also hate Kotaku. No, I just remember there's some drama or something. I don't know what was going on there. I love Kotaku.
So I guess that goes directly into the second part of this question, which what is your favorite Nintendo game of all time?
Yeah, this one I lost sleep over.
Oh, no.
was gonna go, wow, is it Pokemon Silver? Is it just Breath of the Wild? But that's boring. I really think if I had to choose at this one, I think it's Smash Ultimate.
Really?
Yeah, Smash was really important to me. Melee, obviously, I loved, but at this point, I mean, you'd be hard pressed unless you're a super hardcore fighting game person to say that Melee is better than Ultimate. So at this point, yeah, I think Smash Ultimate has to be number one.
I think you're the second person to say that on this entire run of episodes. This is episode number 70, if you don't count the trailer that we put up prior
Jeez.
to. So out of 70 episodes, and some of those are recurring guests, so we don't have like this segment, but you are only the second person to ever say Smash Ultimate. Do you want to guess who the other person was? I'm sure you've heard it.
I should know. I listened to it. Is it Wesley?
No, it is Alex Stadnik.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, he's a big Smash Ultimate fan. And yeah, I mean, that's a great game. I also think it's better than Melee at this point. And like, I understand, like, there are those hardcore, like, down into the nitty gritty mechanics of fighting game people who just like, they compete and they know the ins and outs of every single character, who will say like, oh, well, mechanically Melee does this better. But it's like, yeah, but like when I just sit down and play, it's like, all right, I have Melee and I have Smash Ultimate. Which one am I going to play?
Yeah.
10 times out of 10, I'm firing up Ultimate.
Yeah.
There's just so much to it.
Okay, Brian, Ultimate's great. We all know that. I want to talk about this podcast.
Okay. I was going to talk about your podcast.
Yeah, we can get to that. How's this thing going? How's this All Things Nintendo going?
I think it's going pretty well. You tell me. You're the one who listens to it. I just listen to it when I edit it.
I enjoy it. Sometimes I worry for your guests because you dive right into news, and sometimes the guest is just like, like trying to keep up with a lot of tiny tidbits. But I think the first favorite Nintendo game is a smart way to try and break the seal on your guests. So I like that. How are the numbers doing for this podcast? How you doing?
They're doing pretty well. I mean, a while ago, to kind of lift the curtain here, it was we had like a week where it was like our numbers just doubled for no apparent reason, and
really?
It seems like they stayed there. So that's a good sign. I think that was probably around like last fall.
And you don't know why?
I don't know what it was.
Was it the Reggie interview?
No, it was way after that.
Huh. That's confusing, but that's awesome.
You just called Reggie's favorite Nintendo game a boring choice. He said Breath of the Wild.
Oh, it's so good. I don't know. It's obvious.
You're saying it's the obvious choice at this point.
I guess so. Okay. I like the podcast, Brian. 2 complaints, if I may. Number 1, the outro a bit long. I think you're delighted to have like the longer version of that song. We all like the whistling, but the problem is when I have it in a podcast queue, I just let my podcast roll one into the next. And so I'm sitting there for what feels like 6 minutes listening to this man whistle, waiting for this podcast to wrap up.
Instead, just in your honor, for this episode, I'm going to play the 10-minute looped version of that song on the way out here.
God, no. Okay.
No, actually, I'm going to replace it with the whistling song from the Mario 64 slide.
Oh, okay. That's great. That's great.
We have somebody else whistling for you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then complaint number 2, and these, again, perfect podcast outside of these 2 things. Number 2, it's not a complaint as much as something I'm just tickled by. I encourage people at home to take a shot of grape juice every time you mention that Super Mario World is your favorite platformer of all time, because I think you mention it in 70% of the episodes at least.
Well, I mean, it's a fact.
I know. Well, I know. Not all facts need to be said on every episode, but it's a Nintendo podcast. You got to bring it up. I get it.
Look, Ben, some weeks there isn't a lot to talk about. I'll be honest with you.
Which was what I was stressed about when you first said you're doing this podcast. Because like, I don't know what you're going to talk about every week, man.
Well, hey, last week, it's funny because like I was talking about the top 10 remakes. So I was like, I don't know what's going on. Like there's nothing happening in the world of Nintendo right now.
Right.
And clearly they were gearing up for this week, which they just opened up the floodgates. But I was like, yeah, let me do top 10 remakes. And I talked about why Super Mario Advance 4 Super Mario Brothers 3, which is, again, the worst title of all time.
Yep.
Is one of the best remakes of all time. And then they released it on Switch this week.
And I gotta say, it helped listening to that episode of the podcast. Then on the MinnMax show, our podcast, when I was talking about that game, I had so many things queued up. Like, oh, I know this is the version that includes... it's exciting that it includes the bonus levels for 3 that Nintendo designed that was only from the e-reader, and it was all fresh in my mind because of all things Nintendo.
Oh, look at that. I'm finally doing some good in the world.
That's right. Changing lives, man.
So talk to me about what you've got going on over at MinnMax these days.
You tell me, Brian.
Well, you got a Patreon. I know that much.
Yep, that's right. No, so yeah, the MinnMax Show is our main podcast. We rotate through a bunch of guests, but we have people who listening to this might know, like Kyle Hilliard, Game Informer editor, strangely enough.
Never heard of him.
Jeff Markiafava, if you recall him, Leo Vader, Janet Garcia, who also does things that kind of funny, Kelsey Lewin, the co-director of the Video Game History Foundation, Jacob Geller, YouTube essay extraordinaire, Sarah Podzorski, who used to work in localization at 8.4, so she worked on like Xenoblade Chronicles X, helped bring Undertale to Japan and to the Switch, I believe.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a cool crew. We just rotate through a bunch of folks. But yeah, the MinnMax Show, and it's Patreon supported, but it's not a Patreon exclusive show, so you can find it in your favorite podcast app. And of course, there are 2 N's in MinnMax in honor of Minnesota, just to make it easier to find.
It was one of those names that when you said it, because you told like some of your friends prior to announcing it, like, hey, this is like the name I'm going with, I was like, huh, okay, I don't really know if I'm about that. Like, that's a fine name, I guess.
Oh,
and then you see it written down with the 2 N's, and you're like, oh, okay, that's actually a very clever name. So
yeah, thank you. It's very tough to come up with a good name for an outlet or anything. And I remember there are a couple things that made it feel like, okay, I think we did okay for naming this thing. And the first one was when I announced that I was leaving. I think it was at that point at Game Informer where I said like, yeah, I'm going to start a new thing. And I think Joe asked what I was going to call it. And I said, MinnMax with 2 N's. And Joe's like, that's pretty good. And like to get like an instant reaction of Joe being like, hey, way to go. I felt good about that. And then also my favorite is I listen to so many gaming podcasts. My favorite is on other podcasts when somebody mentions MinnMax and then they like take a detour to be like, don't promote that Patreon. Don't promote Ben Hanson. And they make some little joke thing about it. It happens more often than you think. So it's like, yes, secret, easy promotion every time anybody talks about min-maxing in a video game.
It is very clever, and I will back you up on that. It is very difficult to find a podcast name that is not already taken.
Yes.
There are about 4 names that I went through with this podcast before I settled on this thing, because like everything else that I was trying was like there was some variation of it out there.
Do you have a list of the other names for the show?
Oh man, I had it at some point. I think I threw the list away now, but like I would be like like Nintendo Corner. Let me type that. Oh, there was like a short-lived podcast that went for like 5 episodes and hasn't published anything in like 3 years. We should probably avoid that just in case.
Yep, it's tough. It's tough out there.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing to come up with a name. That's why so many video games. I think it was like Cliff Bleszinski was tweeting about this several years ago, where he's like, there's a reason that almost every video game has like some absurd subtitle to it, like after a colon or a dash or something. It's because every name is taken. It's
right.
There's just like so much entertainment out there now, especially with like streaming and all these subscription services. Like everything has been registered and trademarked, and you just are floating out in an open sea of just hazards. Every time you want to name anything.
But I like the names that just come in and they're really confident and simple. And I know the game was not what everybody wanted it to be, but just Anthem, some name like that. It's like, yeah, cool. Just planting your flag in the word Anthem. This is going to be a big thing now. And I like just a good, simple name that it's shocking when it's not taken.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like Anthem absolutely should have been taken years ago by some like weird like military movie or something. Like, I don't know. It again wasn't the best game, but it was a very simple and good name.
Right. Just like everybody's favorite game name, of course, Fantasy Life I: the girl who steals time.
That's what they always say. It's the most simple name. It's
what
is the one? Dragon Quest Warriors, the World Trees Woe, and the Blight Below.
That's right. Very good. Very good.
Very good name. And then of course the myriad Kingdom Hearts titles that I won't even try to remember at this point. We've used
that Dragon Quest name on our show Trivia Tower that we do here once a month, where the community. You should jump in and compete sometime, Brian.
I've never been invited, Ben. You want to talk about complaints about each other's podcasts?
Invited? Well, I mean, no, to compete.
I've just never been invited onto MinnMax. What's the deal with that?
I don't know. I guess I haven't thought of it. Also, it's like, I don't know. I don't want to. You know, Matt Miller, he'd be in a blind rage if I invited you onto MinnMax.
Notoriously short-tempered Matt Miller.
He's just a Donkey Kong throwing barrels at this point. But no, Trivia Tower is our monthly game trivia show. And we had a category a while ago where that Dragon Quest thing popped up, but we have prizes to give away and stuff. And you support us at any tier on Patreon at patreon.com/MinnMax with 2 N's. You get to compete. And Brian, this is perfect because we have an episode coming up on the 16th. This coming Thursday, And it's a twist though, where this is a film trivia,
Oh God,
movie trivia.
I would probably be terrible at that. Like, I feel like there is a large number of just absolutely beloved classics that I've never seen.
Yeah, what's number one?
I mean, it's going to give you Jeff Marchiafava vibes, but Godfather.
Oh, okay.
Wasn't that him that like had never seen it for the longest time?
No, you're misremembering that. He's obsessed with the Godfather. He had like a Godfather
Well, I saw
cup.
the mug, which I think is why I thought that it was like in celebration. It was like me recently playing Majora's Mask for the first time. Now I have a Majora's Mask thing on in my display case.
Are you going to finish that game?
I did finish it.
Really?
Earlier this week, and I'm going to talk about it probably next week because after this onslaught of stuff, there's going to be nothing to talk about with Nintendo. So
yeah, we're probably torturing people. We should dive into the avalanche of news here.
We should, but before we wrap up and move on to the news, I guess you want to give a further plug of your Patreon?
I can't. I shan't. Yeah, patreon.com/MinnMax with 2 N's. You can support independent games media. Check it out. Unlock a tier that works for you. Check out our YouTube channel, MinnMax, youtube.com/MinnMax. We have the MinnMax Show. We have a bunch of other content there, including interviews. We've interviewed the director of Super Mario RPG. And he talked about how much he wanted to make a sequel. We interviewed Giles Goddard, who used to work at Nintendo, worked on Star Fox. He's the man who programmed the stretchy face in Super Mario 64.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then he also told us about a prototype that he made for Zelda 64 before Ocarina was even a name in there. And the prototype involved portals. So you could jump from one area to the next. And then he actually, after that interview, I think like a year after that interview, he then like actually shared a clip of what it looked like. He got the prototype up and running. So there's some cool Nintendo history there. And then also we have a game club series that we call the Deepest Dive. And so we've had huge multi-part discussions, which were really fun, about games like Chrono Trigger, Super Mario 64 with Dan Reichert, Metroid Dread was a good one. So yeah, a bunch of Nintendo goodies on that channel.
All kinds of goodies all around. God, I'm forgetting the name of the podcast. Is it Crossfade?
Yeah, Ben Helgeson, former host of the Game Informer show.
Yeah, I listened to several episodes of that, and I loved that. Like, I love the dueling album review format there. Like, God, it's such a great show, and Matt Helgeson's voice is just like liquid gold going into your ears.
Yep, it's not fair to the rest of us. Yeah, so that's a music podcast. That's still up there on the feed if you want to check out those episodes. They're all evergreen. Yeah,
so definitely go check out MinnMax over on Patreon and wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Ben, we have this Nintendo Direct to dive into, but before that, there was a little bit of news that hit outside of this Direct, so we'll just plow through that really quick. Nintendo released its most recent sales numbers, and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe still on top, but it crossed the half-century mark now. 52 million units sold.
That's so bananas.
That's 10 million more than number 2, which is still Animal Crossing New Horizon. And then Pokemon Scarlet and Violet have already topped the sales of Super Mario Party, Ring Fit Adventure, and Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet's currently at the number 7 spot overall. Just over 20 million units sold between those two games. And then the Switch has now sold more than 122 million units.
Unbelievable.
Making it the second highest selling Nintendo system of all time. But it still trails the DS by about 32 million units because people forget the DS almost reached the PS2 in lifetime sales.
It's bananas. That. Yeah, I think the Switch will eventually get there. I think people are going to be buying this thing for so long. Yeah, I mean, I think 5 years from now, I just think there's going to be people like my sister who's like, oh, what's the Mario Kart machine? Okay, this thing is cheap. I'll still buy it. Like, I think it's going to have a long tail for sure.
Do you think that they're going to just release an upgraded version of the Switch and that's going to be considered like part of the Nintendo Switch family of systems, and that's going to contribute to the sales? And then, all these people who have like the base model Switch, like that's what I'm waiting for to upgrade I don't have an OLED. I don't have like the larger battery life or the Switch Lite. I'm waiting for like the Switch Pro or whatever it ends up being. That's been rumored for like 5 years now, because I don't want to drop money on all these kind of half steps towards the next generation. I want like the full on, like, this is going to make Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom actually run well.
I know. Yeah. Boy, I'd like to think so, but it's impossible to predict Nintendo. You cannot do it. So I'm not even going to dare.
I feel like that is what's going to ultimately push it to beat PS2, is if they release that Switch Pro and just consider that part of the Switch family and not like an all new like Switch 2,
Right. Yeah. Who knows? But banana sales. I saw like even kind of, it's still impressive to look at the software sales. It's a little bit lower. Like what Xenoblade Chronicles 3 was at 1.8 million, I think, where it's like, okay, that's pretty good for a huge RPG like that.
Just everything they release on Switch seems to sell pretty well. Like I feel like every game that they've released on like the major franchises just instantly becomes the top selling game of that franchise in the history of that series. And it's just amazing the power that this system has, especially coming off the Wii U, which was just the biggest catastrophe Nintendo released since the Virtual Boy.
Right. Still good. We played it together. Or no, you were going to come over for Extra Life and play it, but we still streamed it without you. And turns out Nintendo Land is still fun, Brian Shea.
Yeah, the Wii U, I defend the games library, but boy, what a marketing misstep that system was.
Yeah, there's no good way to go about it. But yeah, hats off to the Switch, nailing it.
Ben, you seem like the kind of guy who still checks in with SNL in 2023. Is that accurate?
Oh gosh, yes. I watch the highlights every Sunday on YouTube.
Did you happen to see the Pedro Pascal Mario Kart sketch?
I did. There's a part of me where I saw it and I was like, okay, maybe I'm a snob, but I'm like, okay, the obvious thing. What if we made a dark Mario Kart? But I still enjoyed it. Production values were impressive, and the biggest thrill out of that dark sketch was listening to friend of the show, Kit and Krista's podcast, where they were talking about just imagining the reaction within Nintendo. And they were like, oh my God, like for sure, Nintendo just was melting down. There were very serious emails sent back and forth. They didn't know, right? But they were just imagining like their prediction of what would happen is that very serious emails would have to go back and forth about why is Toad a bisexual? Like just like stripping all humor out of the sketch and just getting down to trying to explain it to all of Nintendo corporate. It's just a nightmare.
Do you think anybody in like the executive level of Nintendo thought it was funny?
No.
No,
not to say they don't have senses of humor, but I think just like culturally, and also I'm sure if you created this stuff, I think like in your mind, the laziest joke in the world is like, what if Mario had a gun? Like that type of thing. And that's kind of the angle they're taking. So I'm sure they're just sick of it.
We already got that game with Mario and Rabbids.
That's right.
But yeah, I thought the sketch was pretty good. I enjoyed hearing Pedro Pascal deliver "Let's a Go" or "It's a Me Mario" with a dramatic delivery that he does.
Right. Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, and it's great that they basically just took scenes from The Last of Us and made it like with the Goomba.
Yeah, silly.
That was very funny. But I saw it on YouTube as well. I haven't watched Saturday Night Live actually on TV in years. But as of this recording, it has annihilated all the other recent videos on the SNL channel. It's at just under 9 million views.
Wow.
Whereas most of the other SNL videos range from like 1 to 2 million views, which is still very good. But 9 million views. That has definitely made some waves because gamers gonna game. Am I right?
Hey, gamers gonna game. Also, I wonder, is this a good lesson for them to learn? Is every time they hit the gamer internet button, it blows up? Like, it seems like that Wario sketch with Elon Musk was probably the biggest from that episode too. So they're learning the lesson,
They are absolutely. Who populates the internet better than gamers? Nobody.
That's right. Nobody.
Speaking of gamers, Ben, the gamers over at Did You Know Gaming. Have you seen their latest video starring Star Fox Armada? You heard about this?
No.
There was an unreleased. This is a video they just did this week where, for people who don't know, Did You Know Gaming is a YouTube channel that dives deep into like just kind of like uncover these lost artifacts or like little known facts about video games. And they had a piece up this week about Star Fox Armada, which was a pitch that somebody at Retro Studios, the studio that did the modern Donkey Kong Country games, as well as they're working on the new Metroid Prime game.
Yeah.
But apparently shortly after Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze wrapped up development, they one of the artists pitched this idea that was basically a direct sequel to Star Fox 64. Ooh. And it was very much in that same style. It was for the Wii U. And it was like, Fox is never going to get out of the R-Wing. There's going to be kind of like this, like dealing with the aftermath of this war that happened in the Lilac system. And like you had to actually, it played into like kind of the mercenary angle of like Star Fox as a team. and you could go around and like you would get money for completing these rewards, but then it would be like, all right, well, how much of that do you want to send back to like the rebuilding efforts on Corneria versus how much do you want to keep for yourself to like upgrade your ship and everything?
That seems cool.
And like, you know how like we'd be playing Star Fox 64 and like Star Wolf would invade your mission out of nowhere while you're trying to complete whatever. They would have some sort of option where like an online player could do that with their team and actually invade it. You could turn it off, they said, if you wanted to. It sounded very, very cool. And like basically it was just going to ignore all the other recent Star Fox games and just be like, Star Fox 64 is the game that we're doing a sequel to.
That's interesting. I wonder if it didn't get greenlit because they were already working on Star Fox Zero with Platinum.
Well, according to the guy they interviewed, Retro Studios was not very welcome to pitches from people who weren't like leadership at the studio. Which is why that guy ultimately left. He said in the interview that they did with him. But it was a very interesting video. I encourage everybody to go watch it. And I encourage Nintendo to say, hey, we should make this game because it sounds incredible.
Do you think if you were a gambling man, would you put 1,000 of your hard-earned dollars on the fact that Star Fox Zero will someday come to Switch?
I've been saying it many, many times.
I know.
Probably so as much as I say that Mario World is my favorite platformer.
Yeah, he did it, everyone. Take the shot. So you'd put $1,000 on that?
Again, it goes back to what you said earlier and what I've said in several episodes, that it's impossible to predict what Nintendo is going to do. But I would say that that's one of the last big Wii U games that hasn't come over to Switch, right?
Yep.
And Miyamoto has said that that's the most underrated game on the Wii U, didn't he?
Mm-hmm. I believe we asked him that, yeah.
Yeah, from the Breath of the Wild cover story?
I think that might have been a separate like E3 interview we did with Miyamoto.
Oh yeah, I would think I was in the room for that one actually.
Yeah, you could be. Yeah.
It was for it was for Breath of the Wild. I was in the room for that interview, and or Mario Odyssey maybe, I don't know.
I think it was Mario Odyssey.
It was Mario Odyssey, yeah. And yeah, I think it was Ben Reeves that asked like, what's the most underrated Nintendo game or most underrated recent Nintendo game, and he said Star Fox Zero, like without hesitation. I would hope that he would want to kind of fix that and give us the game that it should have been, which is just remove all the second screen nonsense and all the weird motion control stuff and just make it play like Star Fox 64, because I do think there's a good game under that, and I think it is going to come eventually.
Okay, $1,000. You heard it here first, folks.
So Ben, that is all the non-Nintendo Direct news. So we're just going to jump right into the Nintendo Direct news. What was your biggest prediction coming into this Direct?
Biggest prediction. I think I was predicting that Level 5 would make a game called Deca Police. I remember I called that. No, I think it was that, that Tears of the Kingdom will have something. I thought it was going to be a bigger gameplay-focused blowout for Tears of the Kingdom, since we're coming up on that release. And it was a little more cryptic of a trailer than I expected, but we probably get to that one later. But that was the biggie of like the slam dunk that'll be there, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, and we actually had people on our staff who were predicting that it wasn't going to be in the Direct, which I think would have caused riots on the streets of Twitter.
Yes.
However, his prediction was that it would get its own Direct like in a week or two. Like we just have like we're not going to show Direct or Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom.
It's still uncomfortable to say. I'm with you.
But also Breath of the Wild. I remember when we learned that Breath of the Wild was the name, because I think it was Kyle Hilliard went to the pre-brief for that E3 with Nintendo like before they announced it, and he was walking with me and me and a couple other people from Game Informer, and he was just like, "Oh yeah, they told us the name also," and I was like, "What's the name?" And he's like, "Breath of the Wild," and I'm like, "The hell?" That's an awful name. And now it's just like second nature to say that. Right.
So eventually Tears of the Kingdom is just going to flow from our tongues.
TOTK is not nearly as elegant of an abbreviation as BOTW though.
No, every time I see that, I think like, is someone talking about TikTok? I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, but I was on board with you that it was going to have an actual presence instead of like a tease that there's going to be a focused Tears of the Kingdom Direct down the road.
Right.
And that's ultimately what we did get. We'll talk about that later because that was what closed out the show. So we're going to use that to close out this segment. So we're going to start off here, Ben. The Direct led off with Pikmin 4. Are you a Pikmin guy?
I loved Pikmin 1. And I played a lot of Pikmin 2's multiplayer. And then I'm a little spotty after that. It's one of those that I loved and I've been meaning to get back to, and the Pikmin 3, even with the Switch port, I didn't go back to it. I tried it on Wii U and the controls were frustrating, and like it was a cool idea to have the gamepad set up for like the map and stuff, but it was just like setting up the ideal way to play Pikmin 3 in the Wii U kind of turned me off, and so I didn't get that far.
I've been wanting to play Pikmin 3 on Switch, and I'm so mad that I missed, like, I guess like a couple months ago now at this point. It was on sale for like $30, which is unheard of for a first-party Nintendo game. Even though this game is, if you count the Wii U version, 10 years old now,
Yeah.
it's still like $60 on the eShop, so I'm holding off on it. I never played Pikmin 3.
Well, if you recall your history, Bill Trinan over there from Nintendo, when asked, we also asked him what the most underrated Wii U game of all time was, and he said Pikmin 3.
Oh,
specifically the bingo battle mode in Pikmin 3.
The bingo battle mode. I have no idea what that is, but it sounds fun.
Yep.
But yeah, this is like I said, this is the first mainline release in the series since 2013. We've had Pikmin Bloom, obviously, and then the Pikmin 3 Switch release since then, but you know, those don't count.
And Hey Pikmin, that would have been before that.
Oh God, Hey Pikmin. That was the like a side scroller, right?
Yeah.
On 3DS.
Mm-hmm.
Oof. And this version, I guess the new stuff is they have Ice Pikmin who can freeze enemies in the environment, plus a space dog named Owachi who can help by destroying obstacles and carrying Pikmin.
I would love to know the etymology of Owachi, because what Olimar is supposed to be Mario, right? Like, but rearranged. But then Owachi, is there something I'm missing here?
It's no, I don't know what it is. I was trying to come up with something clever with like an anagram there, but no, there's nope, not gonna try.
There's nothing. So if you do you think he's related to Poochie? He looks Poochie-esque from Yoshi's Island, doesn't he?
Oh man, I wonder if there's like something in like the Japanese name of Poochie. I don't know what the Japanese name for Poochie is. It might just be Poochie. But you know, like how like a lot of characters in the Japanese versions of these games, especially Pokemon, but like, you know, they'll have like different names. I wonder if like it's a anagram of whatever Poochie is called in Japanese.
That'd be interesting. I don't know.
No idea.
I don't know.
But I thought this game was going to be coming out later in the year, but it's coming out July 21st.
Yeah.
Which is about a week after Pikmin 3's 10-year anniversary.
Yeah, that's cool. Seems like a great summer game. You got a nice ice Pikmin to cool you down, throw a couple in your drink. You're having a good time.
I bet they make your drink taste terrible.
Mm-hmm. Well, with the blood and all, yeah.
Yes, with the blood, because, you know, they're allergic to alcohol, so they just explode in a bloody mess.
That's it.
We got a bunch of DLC stuff here, so I'm just going to kind of zoom through this real quick. Xenoblade Chronicles 3, we got a quick look at the next expansion pass additions. Volume 3 of the pass adds a new hero named Masha, plus challenge battles with roguelike elements where you can earn new in-game outfits for your main characters. Volume 3 arrives on February 15th. And then Volume 4 of the expansion pass will add an all-new original story scenario and will come out later this year. Got anything on this? Because I actually never played Xenoblade Chronicles 3.
I liked what I played, but I only played about 4 hours, and I understand that's nothing. But you know, we rank. We have a public debate on the MinnMax show for the greatest games of the year, and I think Kelsey Lewin in our crew, she pushed it. So Xenoblade Chronicles 3, I think, was our third favorite game collectively from 2022. So
wow,
we should all go back and play that.
I know that it has one of the most enthusiastic fan bases, like this side of Pokemon, because you and I both realized when we did the Pokemon cover story, that is a passionate fan base.
You can use another word other than passionate.
They are very, very passionate.
That's right. And all passion's good.
Yes. Crimes of passion. That's why they get off easy.
That's right. Can't charge it.
Speaking of wave-based DLC content, Fire Emblem Engage DLC, we learned about waves 2 through 4. Wave 2 adds new emblems, including Hector, Soren, and Camilla. Wave 3 also adds new emblems, including Chrome, Robin, and Veronica. And then Wave 4 is going to add a new story called Fell Xenologue, which is in the grand tradition of Japanese RPGs of having a name that just makes no sense.
That's right.
Wave 2 is actually available now, and the rest of these are coming through the rest of the year. And then we got another wave-based DLC announcement, which is Splatoon 3's expansion pass. Oh man, there's so many DLC announcements in this direct. Wave 1 was the return of Inkopolis Plaza, which is the location of Splatoon 1. I'm very excited about that, actually, because I did kind of miss Inkopolis. There's going to be new shopkeepers and the return of the Squid Sisters, who will perform during Splatfest. That arrives this spring. And then Wave 2 is a single-player campaign, which I have always said is amazing, the single player content of Splatoon.
Yeah.
It's called Side Order, and it's looking into what happened to Inkopolis Square, which is the location of Splatoon 2. And I don't know if you saw this trailer, but it's like a
Oh my
black and
God.
white, kind of like artsy looking area now. And
This is not getting enough attention. This is secretly the most fascinating thing in this entire Nintendo Direct is this side story trailer. It feels like an indie game. It's like Unfinished Swan, and it just keeps like cutting to these bizarre artistic images. I mean, I don't think Splatoon's trailers in general get enough credit for just how weird they are.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
fascinating.
Now, are you into Splatoon? Because like it seems like especially the single player stuff seems like you're kind of weird.
It is my kind of weird. I didn't finish Splatoon 3 single player. I feel like a real jerk about it. I like Splatoon. I really liked Splatoon 1, and I kind of trailed off after that. You might sense a theme here. But I am very curious. And the fact that this feels like it's going to be kind of literally a side story, and that you won't have to finish the single player campaign in Splatoon 3 to check this out. I am so curious what they do with this artistic take on Splatoon single player.
I think you would like the Octo expansion of Splatoon 2, which is included for the Switch Online expansion pack if you have that. And then I think the single player campaign of Splatoon 3 might be the best single player stuff they've ever done.
Yeah, I've played like 4 hours of it or so. Like I enjoyed it.
It just been far from finishing it then, probably.
Yeah, I should go back to it.
It's been like a while since I beat it, because I beat it before it came out. But like, it's like I don't think it was much longer than a few like 7 hours or so.
Okay,
so you're getting close.
Sure.
And the final sequence is just great in that. So definitely recommend going and check it out. The only thing I would say is worse than Splatoon 2's campaign is the boss battles aren't as good in Splatoon 3. But other than that, I think the level designs are fantastic.
Yeah, right on. Curious what they do with the DLC here.
Guess what, Ben? The waves keep on crashing because we've got news about the 4th wave of DLC for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe.
Oh, Yoshi's Island. Playing that music, it was great.
New course, Yoshi's Island. This was like the main criticism of, aside from like the graphics that were kind of mismatched with the base courses and everything being a little bit, like it's just a little bit different. The main criticism of this has been like, it's just like old courses. Like, what's the big deal? And, the last release, we got a new course, and now we're getting an all new course on Yoshi's Island. And also, we're getting a playable character, which is the first time they've done this since Mario Kart 8 Deluxe launched. I know it's a returning character, but it's Birdo.
Yeah. Shay, I love Nintendo. I deeply love it. I feel like how many times can they add, hey, we're now Birdo's added as a playable character and expect us to care? Like, who's on the edge of their seat over this Birdo edition?
I think earlier this year, Birdo joined Mario Strikers.
Yeah, I know. It's just a constant avalanche. I feel like you can set your watch to every 6 months. Now we've added Birdo to this game. Sure, okay.
Can't wait for Birdo to be a playable character in Tears of the Kingdom.
Oh my God, I can't wait.
But hidden in the press release, Nintendo also announced that more returning characters from past Mario Kart games will be coming to the game through DLC. So, Ben, I actually made a list of all the returning characters that it could be that are not already in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. I want to get your sense of which one it might be. This also includes characters from Mario Kart Tour, which is the mobile game. So there are some that they're just completely just fabricated new characters. But we have Diddy Kong, Donkey Kong Jr., Funky Kong, Honey Queen, Koopa Paratroopa, Pauline, Musician Mario, Petey Piranha, Rob, Wiggler, Peachette, Hammer Bro, Boomerang Bro, and Kamek. Which one of those would you put your $1,000 down on?
I think that bee is coming in, man. I think the Galaxy Bee.
Honey Queen?
Honey Queen.
Oh boy. I would say, I would probably say Pauline, because of like the way Mario Odyssey really brought her back into the mainstream, but it also might be Diddy Kong Jr. Diddy Kong Jr. Donkey Kong Jr. or Diddy Kong. One of the two. One of those two.
Yeah. You know who they should bring in, and who's secretly the greatest Nintendo character of all time, is from Dr. Mario World, that iOS release. Remember when this is the only character Nintendo's ever added that turned ahead. Remember when they added Dr. Goomba Tower?
Oh, yeah.
Where it's just 3 Goombas stacked on top of each other wearing a doctor's coat. They are truly the best. So please bring them in.
I would love nothing more than for them just to embrace the zaniness that they've created at this point. Like, also, I don't know what the hell Musician Mario is. It didn't have like a Wikipedia link in the Mario wiki or anything. It was just, I guess, a character they created for Mario Kart Tour.
Oh, weird. It's not like a Mario Paint thing?
If it is, then I'm fully on board with that because I love Mario Paint.
Huh, weird.
Do you know how I got Mario Paint?
You won it in a competition.
Well, we bought it at a store, but
That's
actually
right.
the way it worked out was I fell, and I was a little kid, and I fell on my dad's weight bench. I was playing, I don't know, I was climbing up on it like an idiot, and I fell, and I gashed open my lip, and I do get stitches. And my parents told me that if I like, you know, didn't fight the doctor, basically, that if I just sat still and let them do their thing, I could get a Super Nintendo game. And that was the game that I got. And
Wow.
I was just obsessed with that game for the longest. I loved making dumb little songs in the composer, playing the Fly Swatter game. That was so much fun playing that game.
Yeah, and every one of your songs was an ode to how much you hated that doctor.
Yeah, it was just all about the revenge that I'm going to extract on that doctor, which, you know, may or may not have happened.
And strangely enough, the doctor that day, Dr. Goomba Tower.
Dr. Goomba Tower. How are you feeling about this Mario Kart DLC so far?
I don't know. We all like Mario Kart, but I'm not excited. Even though Yoshi's Island is one of my favorite Nintendo games, but even then, it's like, oh, that's cool. But I don't think I'll ever play it, if we're being honest here.
But you don't think that having like all these extra courses is like really cool, or like a really big value added to this game that was already a massive success?
It's cool. I'm happy for them, making the good move deep into this game's life cycle to start supporting it in a bigger way. But I don't think it's getting my blood flowing. But
Okay.
but I support it.
I've checked out every wave that they've released. I haven't gone back and played like a ton of it.
See,
but maybe that'll change. I mean, Ben,
no,
we are hanging out tonight. The listeners need to know. You are coming over to my house. We are not going to do anything else but play these DLC courses on Mario Kart 8 Deluxe.
That sounds great, Brian. I'm looking forward to it.
It's weird how like Nintendo was once like resistant to like DLC or any kind of online features in their games.
Right.
And now like they can't help but release wave-based DLCs. They just can't help themselves.
Yep. Expansion passes, expansion packs, whatever you need.
And yet we never got any like legit DLC for Mario Odyssey, which is just maddening to me.
Well, I mean,
we got the Luigi balloon thing, but like...
Right. Now you can never say never, because after this Mario Kart 8 thing, it's like they'll fire anything back up after a period of time. The rules they do not apply to a Nintendo thing. So you never know. Like, I think it was... God, was it on All Things Nintendo where you're talking about the potential of like, oh, I wonder if they do like a movie-themed piece of DLC for Mario Odyssey? Like, it truly is not impossible.
It's just so weird that like I thought like, okay, we're gonna get Isle Delfino, we're gonna get like some like galaxy themed kingdom that you can go around, because we got the Mario 64 kingdom, and I was like, oh, this is great. And then we just never got anything else. I thought for sure they were just gonna add new kingdoms, like an expansion pass. It's gonna include 3 new kingdoms, complete with new power moons and everything. It's like, no, never got anything like that.
It's bizarre. Yeah, I was actually just playing Mario Odyssey this weekend with my nephews. Good. Believe it or not, it's so good. But I was just floored by booting that game up. They have a big splash screen right when you start it up, and it's like, play this game in VR for the Labo VR thing. But like, it's so bizarre that forever now baked into one of the greatest games of all time. Like on the main menu, they just have play in VR, and it's just like the most obscure bit of Nintendo history that's shoved front and center on one of the greatest games ever.
It was Labo, right? Like Labo VR.
Labo VR. Yep.
I remember Kyle, I think, checked that out, and he was like, didn't he just like lay down on the ground?
Yeah, there was some like frog jumping game that I tried it for 10 minutes, and I said, well, all right, check it off the bucket list.
What a strange thing. I'm glad we got that instead of like new kingdoms for DLC.
Yep, exactly.
We have some kind of quick hits here. We'll just speed through this. What is your experience with Samba de Amigo?
You know what? I don't know if I've ever played it. I want to, and so I'm excited about this new Samba de Amigo Party Central. Like I was always fascinated that this Dreamcast game, just a weird, funky thing. My favorite little tidbit is that, remember they ported it to Wii?
Did they?
Yeah, they brought it to Wii,
that.
And it was brought to the Wii because of Gearbox, Randy Pitchford's Gearbox. I'm sorry, Andrew Reiner's Gearbox, because people at Gearbox were like, we just thought this game was awesome. And so we reached out to Sega to see if we could personally port it to the Wii. And so Gearbox, the Borderlands creators, are the reason that thing eventually was brought over. So it's cool to see Sega reviving this kind of obscure thing.
Yeah, and like it's such a strange, because like the Dreamcast was notorious for how many peripherals it had, and then the Wii kind of picked up that torch and ran with it. but like this is just you're using the Joy-Cons like maracas to the music, shaking them and like throwing them in different directions and all that stuff. And this one has online mode for the first time in the series history and
Yep.
local multiplayer like normal, and says 40 songs are included spanning genres from all around the world. And that comes out this summer. I don't know. I'm looking forward to playing it. I can always use a new fun rhythm game.
Yeah, and there's a love tester mode, so
Ooh, is there?
get ready, everybody.
Oh, should have come out next week. But we
for
have
Valentine's Day.
Dead Cells Return to Castlevania. How excited are you for this?
Don't make me be negative, Shay. See, you're putting your guests on the spot, and you're making me seem negative for all this. I'm not a Castlevania guy. However, I really like Dead Cells, and I am convinced that this is going to be on some people's top 10s at the end of the year. I think this is going to be huge and really fun.
Ben, tell me about all the reasons you hate Castlevania.
Of like the big franchises, it's one that I've dabbled in a couple times, and it's never clicked for me. And just, I don't know. Maybe, obviously not having Nintendo consoles growing up is a big reason for that.
That probably is at least contributing to it. But I don't know. I'm very excited for this, especially the Castlevania music coming in, like the way, like the form of Dead Cells, like in the style of Dead Cells, like that's incredible. Because Castlevania, no matter what you think of like the gameplay and like the way it's designed and everything, that music absolutely slaps.
Oh yeah, I was just listening to Smash's version of the Castlevania music last week.
Good.
Like it's unbelievable.
Yeah, but this one coming out very soon. March 6th is the release date on this one. And then did you play Ghost Trick Phantom Detective on the DS?
I know it's beloved. I played it when it came to iOS.
Oh, okay.
They released it like in a weird chapter format, I think, on iOS. But I didn't finish it, and I know it has a hardcore fan base, and so I am delighted to see this. This was one of the biggest out of left field surprises for the entire Direct.
Oh, absolutely. I'd never actually played this game before, so I don't really know what to think about it, but I know that Game Informer's Marcus Stewart was extremely excited when it popped up on screen. And
oh, good.
All I could tell from like the trailer is that it's just adding HD graphics, which I guess for fans of this weird, previously very difficult to play game because it was locked away on the DS or iOS.
Yeah.
That's probably enough for them to have it on a modern system. I know it is for me for like a lot of these games where it's like, oh, that's much more convenient than having to like dust off my GameCube to play this weird, obscure game now.
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited.
That's coming out this summer. And then how are you feeling about Bayonetta Origins, Syriza and the Lost Demon? Because speaking of being a little negative, that's right. Me on this one.
Yeah, I think you're wrong, Shay. This is I want to champion this in a big way. I don't know, man. I finished Bayonetta 2, but I wasn't as gaga over it as everybody else. So I'm excited to see Platinum make a weird little thing.
Yeah, and it's like already like a playable demo in Bayonetta 3 if you go to like the shopkeeper and like have some secret, I don't know, item that you can give him. Like you can actually play like a little demo of this.
Right.
It's a very weird thing because like it was out before they even announced this game. So people just thought, oh, it's like a weird little like side game thing that you can play. And no, it's actually like a proof of concept for their next game.
Yeah, it's cool.
But yeah, they gave us some gameplay, like showing the strategic use of characters' abilities in battles, attain more powers and open new paths, and then solving puzzles. I don't know. I'm probably not going to play this one if I'm being honest. But It's coming out March 17th. And then Disney's Illusion Island, which, by the way, this was the one that was revealed during last fall's Disney and Marvel Games Showcase.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like the darling for me. Like, it was the sleeper hit of that showcase for me. Like, I was like, oh, this looks actually very fun. It's a 2D co-op platformer. It kind of looks like it plays like a Rayman game.
Yeah. And, I'm super into it. Like, I love the more recent Mickey art style, and I love Rayman Legends and Rayman Origins. I feel like I'm cautiously optimistic for this one. Like the developer is the same developer that made the most recent Battletoads, which was fine.
Yeah.
And there's something every time I see gameplay for this game, it just looks a little barren. It just looks kind of the backgrounds are kind of simple. I don't know. I'm just so in love with the art from the Rayman series that nothing can compete. But I'm definitely curious about it.
Yeah, I think that it's going to come down to how well it plays, right? Because like, it's an interesting aesthetic and interesting art style, but I feel like I've got to get my hands on this one to really make a judgment call on it. But at the very least, I am intrigued. I think that it has a high ceiling, and we'll see how it ends up. But we know that's coming July 28th exclusively on Switch. Etrian Odyssey Origins Collection. I don't know really what to say about this, aside from it has Etrian Odyssey 1, 2, and 3 HD coming to Switch and Steam on June 1st.
Cool.
Sea of Stars, which is one that I am very excited about. That is kind of like the Chrono Trigger meets Final Fantasy VI homage game.
Yeah, it feels, if I may be more particular, it feels like an homage to like GBA RPGs. It feels almost like a Golden Sun homage, you know? Something about the art style feels like not from Super Nintendo, but from GBA. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, I mean, because GBA colors kind of had to pop a little bit more.
And everything's just kind of bigger and blockier. Something about it, yeah.
Yeah, I think that I definitely see that. But they've specifically referenced like Chrono Trigger as like their influence, which is why they have Yasunori Mitsuda contributing to the soundtrack, which is incredible because, you know, the Chrono Trigger music is fantastic. So hopefully he's able to contribute some more gems to this soundtrack as well. What I saw of it, because I actually got to learn about this game before it was announced. I had an interview with the developers. I remember it was the first week that we were all working from home. And they're like, hey, like the developers behind The Messenger, which is a game I liked okay when it came out.
I think you gave it a 7.75.
It was something like that. It was a perfectly good. I thought it was a Ninja Gaiden game at first, and then it became a Metroidvania. Like once you opened up, but it had a really cool mechanic where like you were time traveling, and when you went into the future, it was like Super Nintendo visuals. And when you went to the past, it was NES visuals.
Right.
It was a very cool idea. And this is also based around like kind of like the sun and the moon. It takes place like 1,000 years before The Messenger. So it's like a distant prequel.
That's cool.
But it's still in the same world. But yeah, they announced that there is a free demo coming out, or it's available now. And then August 29th is when it launches on Switch, PlayStation, and PC. So very excited to learn more about that game. And then the last little quick hit that I wanted to give here was Advance Wars 1 and 2 Reboot Camp. What was what was going through your mind as we heard about the delay last year and then just radio silence for the following year?
I thought for sure they're going to shadow drop it at some point. Just be like, all right, it's out now, moving on. But even like at the start of this trailer when they said it's only a couple of months away, it's like, oh no, are they going to leave it ambiguous? But then no, end of the trailer, they said April 21st, this thing's coming. So it's really just delayed a year, right?
Yeah, so it was presumably delayed because they were like, oh, because of world events, we're going to delay this game that's about like tanks rolling through a town.
Yeah.
And that makes sense. But now here we are, February 10th, 2023. Not much has changed.
Right. Well, I think it has changed in terms of press coverage, you know?
Yeah.
And sadly, that's the point we're at. Like, I'm just looking at Google Trends for Ukraine. Go ahead and look at that graph, everybody. It's like no one's talking about this war anymore, sadly, but that's all Nintendo needs to be like, all right, let's put it out. We're not going to get lit up for this.
Yeah, I mean, we also had Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 come out last year, which I don't think would be considered more sensitive to the atrocities of war.
Right.
So I think a cartoony game about like little like anime guys riding around in tanks is probably okay. But yeah, April 21st. I'm excited to play this. I liked the Advanced War games back in the day. So why not play this? And Wargroove kind of kept me satisfied in the meantime.
That's right. That's
Wargroove,
right.
very good game. If you haven't checked that out and you're excited for this game, maybe play some Wargroove in the meantime. But we have a remaster to talk about other than Advance Wars 1 and 2 Reboot Camp and Etrian Odyssey, and that is Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe.
Yeah.
So this appeared on the Direct, and I actually had a hands-off demo with the game the other day. I don't know if you got in on this too.
No, why don't you share it, man? Come on.
But yeah, so there are it's a 4-player co-op game. Kirby, Meta Knight, King Dedede, I was going to say Banana Waddle Dee. It's Bandana Waddle Dee. It came out on the Wii, I believe in 2012, it was 2011. So it was the same year as Skyward Sword. And this version has some changes. There's a new copy ability, Mecha Kirby, which just looks just off the wall overpowered. Like he has a jetpack he can float around, and he has lasers and rockets that he can shoot at his enemies. Like
perfect.
It looks like you just blow them to hell, and it's not even close. But I don't know. Maybe it's not as powerful as it looks because I didn't get to actually play it. But there was a Magalore is the character that you were trying to help. His like ship has crashed and you're trying to recover different pieces. There's a Magalore assist mode where you have 2 health bars, and then he fishes you out of the pit, kind of like Lakitu in Mario Kart.
Yeah.
And he also brings you helpful items. And then, but if you beat the game in any mode, you also unlock the EX story, which is kind of the antithesis of Magalore assist mode, which that's like kind of an easy mode. EX story mode is kind of like a hard mode of the story. And then there's also the Magalore Epilogue, which is an all-new story mode for Deluxe. And the people at Nintendo who were giving the demo kind of likened the gameplay to like Mario when he has a fire flower, or kind of like Mega Man. So he has like Magolor can kind of shoot projectiles out, and you can upgrade these projectiles as you go. And then there's a combo meter in this mode where you and your friends who are playing co-op can keep this combo up with these enemies, and it gives you platinum medals based on your score. And then you can also upgrade those abilities based on that stuff. And then there's one final thing called Merry Magoland, which they're very lucky that they didn't spell Magolor Magalor, because that would have a different connotation.
And you can just call it Mary Magdalene for short.
Yes. But they're the sub games from previous Kirby games. There's 8 sub games from the past, and then 2 all new ones, different control options, so that they showed that like, hey, this is like the shooting gallery one. So you can use the Joy-Cons almost like a light gun, or you can use stick controls for that one. And then there's 100 missions to complete within these sub games, and you can unlock stamps. And then once you fill stamp cards, you get these masks that are just like kind of cosmetic masks you can wear while you're playing with friends. And game's coming out this month, so
yeah,
I'm excited
there's a demo
for it.
out right now. Yeah, I don't know why Return to Dreamland slipped right by me back in the day. Like I was just looking, at Dan Reichert at Game Informer gave it an 8.5. You know, it seems like it should have been more on my radar.
It was one of my favorite Kirby games prior to Return to Forgotten Land.
Yeah. Okay. Well, all right. I'll have to check it out.
All right. We're going to stop messing around here, Ben. We've got some big news, bigger than anything we've talked about so far, I think. At least for me. That's the further expansion of the classic games offered through Nintendo Switch Online. So, we've gotten the NES, SNES, N64, and Sega Genesis. Now we have Game Boy games coming to Switch Online. They've announced, or it's out now, actually. So Tetris, Super Mario Land 2, Link's Awakening DX, which seems kind of like a moot point when we had the Link's Awakening remake already.
Yeah.
Gargoyle's Quest, Game & Watch Gallery 3, which was very, very confusing to me. That's what a random pull that was.
I know.
Alone in the Dark, The New Nightmare, Metroid 2, Return of Samus. Again, I've been saying we should have Metroid 2 on...
well, you have it now. You can't complain. It's on the Switch.
Yeah, I can't complain. Again, we had a better remake that we should have just gotten that one instead. Wario Land 3, Kirby's Dream Land, and then they also have 3 other games they teased are coming, or I guess 4. There's the Zelda Oracle games, Pokemon Trading Card game, which I am so excited about, and then Kirby Tilt and Tumble.
How long do we have Red and Blue?
Oh God, that's got to be later this month, right? With Pokemon Day.
Oh, that'd be interesting. Yeah. And I mean, they've been pretty generous with the N64 Pokemon games, like stadiums are coming soon and stuff, right? So
imagine if there was interactions between the Game Boy Red and Blue and then Pokemon Stadium on N64.
It's nice to want things, but that seems a little too complicated.
It's not going to happen.
I'm struck. Mario Land 2 is great. I love Mario Land 1. Like, I'm more nostalgic over that weird thing.
I was very surprised that was not on the initial offerings. Like, that seems like, I guess maybe they wanted to lead with the game that I guess people consider the better version.
Right. But Mario Land soundtrack, I think, is top tier Mario soundtracks in general. I love that weird game.
I mean, it's no Super Mario World, which is my favorite platformer of all time.
Is it really?
Yeah, little known fact.
Interesting.
But the cool thing about this is 2 players can play locally or online, which is a very out of left field feature. I did not think they were going to do this.
Yeah. So Tetris, what else could you play online together from that Game Boy batch?
Oh man, I don't know. I mean, okay. I've never played. I checked out Gargoyle's Quest very briefly last night.
Yeah,
and it seems like a single player game, but I'm assuming like, can you do Pokemon TCG?
That's a good question. I would imagine so, but also I love that you can switch the filters over to like Game Boy Color.
Oh,
right?
That's so cool. Yeah, I was playing around with that a little bit. So there's Game Boy, which is like the yellow and black color palette, Game Boy Pocket, which is like the white and black color palette, and then the Game Boy Color, which some games are just like, okay, this is just all one color, like Pokemon Red and Blue. It's like, okay, everything's red or everything's blue now. But for like Super Mario Land 2, it actually looks colored in the appropriate ways. So it's and same thing with Tetris. Like that makes those games so much more playable.
How does that work?
Like
how does it know what color it should be? Yeah.
Well, I mean, the developers put it in there.
Well, I mean, but for something like Super Mario Land 2, which wasn't made for the Game Boy Color,
I mean, the developers had to know that it was, because I mean, so many regular Game Boy games added color in Game Boy Color. So Nintendo probably knew the Game Boy Color was going to come out in the next year or two when they released that.
So your theory is there was secret code in those of like, by the way, this is red.
I think so.
Okay.
That's my theory anyway. I don't know if
if a hardcore techie knows this and messages you, please forward that to me because I'd love to know.
Just ask Kelsey. I'm sure she knows.
Kelsey Lewin. Yeah. Okay. Will do.
She is like a wealth of knowledge, or I mean, maybe Wikipedia knows. Who knows?
No, Kelsey. She's not listening to this, right?
Probably not.
It's absurd how much she knows. Like one time on the podcast, on the MinnMax show, somebody wrote in with a trivia competition for like which old retro game is worth more, and it was scary. Like Kelsey mopped the floor with the entire trivia, did not get one wrong, and it wasn't like, big obvious stuff. It was literally stuff like, hey, what's worth more, Gargoyle's Quest, or the one that killed me was Karate Kid Strike Back 3 or something on Super Nintendo. And she's like, just off the dome, she's like, okay, I know that's worth about $43. It's like, Karate Kid Strike Back. How do you know the price of that? She's like, I don't know, I just know it. Like, it is uncanny.
Well, I mean, yeah, I had her on for, I guess it was one of the earlier episodes of All Things Nintendo. We were talking about the biggest anniversaries that happened in 2021, because that's when the show started. So I didn't get to go like every single week. Oh, this is this game's anniversary. And she brought the original Donkey Kong, which was celebrating, I guess it's like 40th anniversary. The amount of information that she presented in such a short time. She was like, oh, this actually derived from like Nintendo's history in like toy production, and before they got into it. I'm like, oh my God, like the facts that she just pulled out of nowhere, it seemed. I mean, I'm sure she did some research for it, but still.
It's disgusting. It's vile at this point. Actually, we have a show that she hosts on MinnMax's YouTube channel called Collector Corner. Where we bring in like big collectors of video game stuff and show off their rare items. And season 2 is going to be kicking off pretty soon here. But in season 1, Chris Kohler from Digital Eclipse, he was showing off. He had several autographs and drawings from Miyamoto. And there was one, I don't know if you saw it, but it really made me laugh, where Miyamoto drew a big picture of Mario and said like, hey, to Chris, keep on rocking or whatever on it. But then Miyamoto drew an L on Mario's hat.
What?
And then they pointed it out to the Miyamoto, crossed it out, and drew an M. It's like the greatest weird Miyamoto drawing, because it's such a weird mistake to have.
Wow. That reminds me of when I met Charles Martinet, and he decided to sign every single corner of the picture with the voice that he was signing in. So he signed in Mario's voice, in Luigi's voice, in Wario's voice, in Waluigi's voice. It was a very fun encounter. He's a very lovely man.
What a legend.
And then they also said Game Boy Advance games, which I think people were even more excited about. That's part of the Switch Online expansion pack. So that's if you have access to Genesis and N64, you now have access to that as well. This was a good collection of games. Super Mario Advance 4, Super Mario Brothers 3.
Yeah,
that clunky title. But, that includes the e-reader levels that we talked about just last week on this show. And then WarioWare, which I am so excited for. I have a great level of nostalgia for that Game Boy Advance version.
It is the best.
Here's one what? You got me into.
Oh, yeah?
Kuru Kuru Kuruin.
Yeah.
Yeah, we played that on Super Boy Showdown, right?
That's right. Well, yeah, we played Kuru Kuru Squash, which was the GameCube version. If you've never played Kuru Kuru, please play this on Game Boy Advance, specifically the challenge mode. It is a weird bit of Nintendo history. I think Eighting was technically the developer, but it is a game that I guess you describe it as like a Twitch-based puzzle game where you're trying to navigate a spinning stick through a maze. But there have been a lot of indie clones of this, and Nintendo's just let it die. But it's awesome that it's in the first wave here, so hopefully more folks will learn the glory of Kuru Kuru. And
I heard you say you squealed. Was that in response to WarioWare or Kuru?
Oh, for Kuru. Yeah.
Okay.
WarioWare, one of the greatest games of all time. Very excited to have that on Switch. I had on my 3DS that Ambassador program, so I had WarioWare on there, and I put so many hours into WarioWare on my 3DS. And also, I'm a big defender of WarioWare. Why am I forgetting the name? Let's Get Together? Is that the name of the game?
Is it?
On which system? The Switch one.
Oh,
from 2 years ago.
Wow. Now I can't even think.
I think I reviewed it. Yes, Get It Together.
Get It Together, yes.
I think everyone's like, oh, it's not classic WarioWare, moving on. But that's still a really funny and really fun game. And everyone needs to go back and show it more love.
And I actually did not review that one, I don't think. But I did play it. I played through the entire thing. It was fun, but I prefer
of course.
Wii version, the smooth moves.
Now that's an odd choice. I know that was your first, right?
No. The Game Boy Advance one was my first.
Okay, well that's weird because that one is notoriously slow because it has to show you how to hold the Wiimote before anything else. And
I just had so much fun doing the dumb motions. That was one of like my favorite Wii games because like it actually used it in a way that the game was designed around it. It wasn't just like, oh yeah, it's Zelda, but you got to swing your sword with your arm instead of the stick or the buttons.
Right. Yeah, it was fun for sure. But you know what I'm excited about? I was just thinking about this morning is the idea of, I think they've been really great for the Super Nintendo stuff for bringing in like some imports, like Panel de Pon.
Oh yeah.
Nintendo Switch Online I have played a stupid amount of that game. It is so fun. Like if you like competitive puzzle games, it is one of the best. And so I started thinking about like, oh, they could bring in the original Rhythm Heaven that wasn't released here for the Game Boy Advance at some point. They haven't said anything, but that's what I'm very excited about. I imported it back in the day and loved it.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, like Rhythm Tengoku. But yeah, that'd be cool to have that someday on the Switch.
I actually said like a few episodes ago that I would love to have the kind of the greatest hits Rhythm Heaven that they put out on 3DS near the end of that lifespan. I would love that on Switch. That was so much fun.
Yeah, for sure. This would be the next best thing.
And Mario Kart Super Circuit, probably the worst Mario Kart game, but it's on Switch now. And then Mario Luigi Superstar Saga, Zelda Minish Cap, and then they got more games coming. Metroid Fusion, which absolutely they should put Zero Mission on as well. Yeah. But Kirby and the Amazing Mirror, Fire Emblem, which is cool.
Yep.
F-Zero Maximum Velocity, and a game you referenced earlier, Golden Sun.
Yeah.
We're very excited about that one.
Very huge.
And this one also supports local and online play for up to 4 players.
So they didn't say 4 swords yet, right?
No, but I mean, with 4-player, that sounds like that's what they're going for, right?
Yeah, that'll be really cool.
God, and I hope they put the GameCube version and they can interact in some way. But again, wishful thinking because
no way.
That's typically not the way these things work.
Nope.
Which of these games are you most looking forward to playing out of all the ones that have either come out or have been announced?
I think just having Classic WarioWare on my Switch, I'll probably play that the most.
Yeah, that seems like one that I would get on a plane and be like, what do I want to play? And it's like, WarioWare, obviously.
Of course.
Just play that for like 10 minutes and be like, okay, that's all I need.
Yep.
And we talked a little bit about this, but what would you like to see added next?
Oh, Legacy of Goku games, of course. I love those weirdo games. That'd be fun. It's like I just feel like they're so limited on the third party that I don't know what would eventually come here. Oh, maybe like again, they wouldn't do it, but like the Final Fantasy VI version for GBA or something. Yeah. But they wouldn't do it.
Yeah, because we got Pixel Remaster coming now, so it's like they don't want.
Is that coming to Switch?
Yeah, they announced that I guess late last year.
Oh, okay. I missed that. Yeah. All right, then. Then it's already there.
I mean, for me, it's got to be, I guess, Metroid Zero Mission. Or I'd love to see, like, Fire Red Leaf Green. Maybe I'd rather have that than just straight up red and blue on the Game Boy version. Fire Red Leaf Green, so awesome and, like, just great versions of it. Go listen to last week's episode if you want my full thoughts on those games.
Yeah.
But yeah,
you know what? Hang on. We're stupid, Brian.
What?
We're idiots.
I know
we're on a Nintendo podcast. I mean, this is how Mother 3 gets out there.
Ooh.
It has to. It has to.
God.
There was no avenue that made sense for them to do it before. Like, what did they just release it as a weird standalone ROM or something? But this is like, if you want to bring in people to your little online service, this is the avenue.
I mean, we have the other 2 Earthbound games.
Yeah.
So Earthbound Beginnings and the SNES Earthbound, and now just put Mother 3 on the GBA. I'd
put $1,000 that's happening.
Wow.
Put it on the line.
Do you think that's break the internet status if it happens?
I think it, for a certain amount of people,
for a certain demographic, yes.
I think it'll be like there was much rejoicing when Kid Icarus Uprising was announced. It's like, we did it! Well, and then everybody kind of moved on.
I mean, if that game was very good, which I don't think it was.
I think it was. It's clunky, but I love that game. But no, I think Mother 3 would be bigger than that. I take it back. I think the quality of that game, would be a talker for a while.
It was like Mirror's Edge Catalyst, where people were very excited and then nobody played it.
Right. No, but I mean, that would be huge. And also it makes sense for them. Like if they're trying to get people into their online service, you need to turn heads. And like, this would be a good way to convince more and more people to check out their subscription service. It makes total sense.
The fact that the expansion pack now has N64, Genesis, and Game Boy Advance. That's a huge selling point for me. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. The N64, I've been playing the hell out of that with the Majora's Mask stuff. I now have the itch to go back and play Ocarina of Time again because I like Ocarina of Time so much more than Majora's Mask.
Oh,
Spoiler alert for whenever I talk about my experience with Majora's Mask. But right around this time in the stream, Ben,
yeah,
in the Game Informer Slack channel, I forget who it was, but somebody put in all caps, "There is so much happening right now," because right after this, with the Game Boy and Game Boy Advance, they announced Metroid Prime for Switch.
Finally, we've heard that this thing has existed for like 40 years, and now it's finally releasing. Very exciting. Yeah, especially the fact that they added, dual analog stick controls for Metroid Prime. I haven't checked it out yet, but I am so curious about that.
I checked it out last night.
Yeah.
And it looks fantastic.
Yeah.
Like,
it's such
it
a cool
looks like
game.
a 2023 game. Like, if you said, like, this is just a new game that we're putting out, and, like, I had no knowledge of Metroid Prime before this, then I would think this was, like, a new game, because they did a great job cleaning up the graphics, making this look like a modern game. It does not look like a GameCube game whatsoever.
Yeah.
And it feels great. Like, using the dual analog stick, it feels great. Like, I talked a little bit about this in the GoldenEye episode a few weeks ago, but, like, when they added the dual analog stick to GoldenEye for Xbox, it feels okay. It's better than the single analog stick controls. This actually feels like a modern game, and it looks like a modern game. This is
That's
the way
awesome.
that bringing these older shooters that are kind of like right when they were still kind of figuring out how to make a first-person shooter work on a console. This is how it should feel when they bring it forward like this.
I wish that Nintendo gave a tip of the cap to whoever is doing the HD remaster for these games. You know, it just drives me nuts when it's like, hey, we're remastering this. It's like, well, who did it? Who do we thank for doing a good job for this, you know?
It's weird how, like, secretive they are about, like, the developers that they're working with. Like, I go to the eShop page all the time to, like, see, like, oh, who's developing this? And it just lists publisher, Nintendo. And I'm like, what? Why is there not a developer field here?
I know. It's infuriating.
It's very strange. But they also is the classic control style if you're a weirdo and you want to use that instead. And the digital version's out now, which is what I was playing. And then the physical version is hitting store shelves February 22nd. Were you surprised it wasn't like the whole trilogy, seeing as how like that was bundled together on the Wii back in the day?
That is odd. But you know what? If it's them testing the waters, sure. It would be weird. I think you'd have to bundle 2 and 3 together. Like 2 and 3 might equal the love that's out there for the first one.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder, did Metroid Prime 3 sell the most? I wonder.
I don't know. I can look
just
that up
on the Wii. But it's exciting to have the first one. Look at the fact that Galaxy 2 wasn't included in 3D All-Stars. Like, Nintendo doesn't want to give you too much to make you too happy.
God,
you know?
I'm still very angry about that. Like, I can't believe we don't have Galaxy 2, but we have all these other games.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm looking at the sales and this Wikipedia article, and they don't list the sales. Oh wait, no, they do. Oh, Metroid Prime 2, less than 1 million according to this Wikipedia article. Metroid Prime sold almost 3 million. Metroid Prime 3 Corruption on Wii sold 1.3 million according to this Wikipedia article that I just hastily brought up here.
That's surprisingly low.
Yeah, but Metroid Prime 1 more than double the sales of the other two combined.
Right.
So
so it makes sense.
And we have Metroid Prime 4 still theoretically coming from now Retro Studios, which I guess they're doing that instead of this Star Fox game that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Ben, that leaves pretty much the biggest announcement or the biggest trailer of this Direct, and that was
Baten Kaitos 1 and 2 HD coming, everybody.
Hell yeah. The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, not Breath of the Wild, but Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah,
we got the new trailer, which showed off a lot of kind of, like you said, cryptic stuff, but we got some concrete stuff. There's a new like arrow that like I guess homes in on a nearby enemy, which looks kind of cool. There's like a thing that he can throw stuff at enemies. I don't know what is it supposed to be, but he's like doing like a flip and like throws a projectile at this enemy.
Yeah,
there's all kinds of like, and Ganondorf has a voice that sounds like Matt Mercer, but I don't know if it is.
Yeah, everyone seems to think it's Matt Mercer. Yeah, that seems to be the big takeaways. Okay, Ganondorf has a voice. It's obviously going to be a big part of this game.
Mm-hmm.
And then the big reveal of Shay.
The amiibo.
No, forget that. No, the weird vehicles in this thing.
Yes. So not only can you customize the hang glider,
Right.
They showed like Majora's Mask is one of them, and you can just get different materials for it. But they also have like there's like this weird like mechanical car thingy, and like I think it was Marcus Stewart who said it was a Green Goblin hoverboard that Link now has. But yeah,
Right.
and also like we got the reveal that like I guess maybe when Zelda falls down into that pit in the intro, the first cutscene or
Yeah.
the first trailer that we got, Link dives in after her. He's not just like, all right, see ya. He's
Oh,
like,
interesting. Yeah, and there's that line where Zelda says like, "Please lend him your power." Where it's like, is
yeah,
Zelda talking to Ganon, and that's why Link's all corrupted and his arms all messed up?
huh. And like I will say, like I know that her voice acting for Breath of the Wild was very hit or miss for some people. The delivery of the like, I don't know if you can beat him or whatever she said,
Sure.
that gave me chills. I'm not gonna lie. Maybe I'm just a Breath of the Wild fanboy, but that
Yeah.
was a very cool moment. And then like the swell of the music and he's jumping off the cliff or whatever it is and like
Yeah.
skydiving. That was a very cool moment in that trailer.
Did you take the vehicles? Do you believe the idea that those you get to like customize them and build them on your own?
Ooh, they look like it, right? They
They
have like
do
that very
look
like
like it.
handcrafted appearance that like this was
Yes.
something that a player made. But
But
like
there's
how would they even work that into the mechanics of that without like having like all right, you just go to this store and you can just buy pieces and then put them together.
and maybe these are like the super simplified version because I'm looking at it now and it's like there's not a bunch of customization options. I guess like the tires, there's something there. Maybe there's enough pieces there, and these are kind of like the bare bones versions of these vehicles. But I love that idea of just seeing people make the makeshift flying machines in Breath of the Wild, and
Mhm.
the team seeing that and then being like, wait a minute. What if this is just? What if we took that kind of janky physicsy trying to make things move and made that a core part of the game? So I'm super excited to see them embrace even more physics wackiness for this.
Yeah, and it was also like kind of playing off the house element that you could build your own house pretty much in Breath of the
Right,
Wild.
right.
So it's very cool to see them embracing it. If that is what in fact it is, it might just be like, hey, yeah, you found this out in the middle of the woods or whatever. But I don't know. It seems like it is what they're doing, and it
Yeah.
seems like that would be a really cool way to kind of give the community a way to. It reminds me of like Connects. Did you ever play with those as a kid?
Oh, big time. Yeah.
That's what those designs look like. It looks like somebody
Yep.
just got a box of old Connects. They're like, yeah, here's a car that Link can ride around in. I have this Link figure. I'm just gonna make him like drive around, and then he's gonna roll up to Ganondorf and kick his ass.
Yep. That seems great. And it's cool for them to presumably like double down on kind of the Blood Moon idea of
Mm-hmm.
just the world is really in hell every time this Ganon infused Blood Moon is out there.
Yeah, like I don't know. I'm very excited to see like the Breath of the Wild take on Ganon or Ganondorf, I should say.
Yeah.
Yeah, when they announced that, I was like, well, that was like one of the few things that Breath of the Wild was really missing. Was like it was just kind of like Ganon was always kind of off in the distance. You could see him floating around Hyrule Castle, and like you could see his like the malice everywhere. But like
Yeah.
he wasn't really a character like he has been in other recent Zelda games. Like think about Twilight Princess and Wind Waker, where he was just
Right.
like always there. Like you were seeing cutscenes of him like looking out over the Great Sea in Wind Waker and like talking about his plans and what he's doing and what's happened to him recently. And it's like he felt like he's talking about his like his dating profile and whatever he's doing in that day. But he's he felt like an actual character, whereas Calamity Ganon was just like, all right, yeah, this guy's evil, and then you go fight him and he's evil and ugly.
Yep. That's about it.
And that was about the extent of that.
Yeah. That's true. There's another shot in the trailer that has caught my eye where it has like a flying beast thing and it's like carrying a bokoblin around.
Yeah, I saw that.
So is he gonna like fly them to you if you're falling in the sky and just like throw them at you for a mid-air fight? Or like what do you think the point of that is?
I mean, I guess just like the fact that you could just be exploring, and because like that was one of the things about Breath of the Wild that everybody loved, right? Was like around every corner there was either something cool or there was like a fight you didn't expect. Like, oh, okay, now the rock is alive and it's fighting me. And it's like maybe like you could just be out in the middle of nowhere and you hear like flapping of wings. You're like, what's that? And you look up and there's suddenly like an enemy about to be dropped on top of you.
Yeah.
I don't know if that would be annoying or cool.
I don't know either.
But in Nintendo, we trust when it comes to the Zelda franchise, I've found.
Yeah, I think so.
They hit more than they miss with this series.
Even if they're asking for $70.
They are asking for $70. So I actually asked Nintendo the reasoning behind this jump up to $70, and they to my surprise, got back to me. So
And
I
they
asked them the
said, we
reasoning.
like money?
They said, we determine the suggested retail price for any Nintendo product on a case-by-case basis. And
Huh.
so I then asked them, like, is this the trend for AAA Nintendo games going forward? And guess what they said?
No comment.
They said, no. We determine the
Oh.
suggested retail price for any Nintendo product on a case-by-case basis. The exact same quote, but with a no in front of it.
Sure. All right. Yeah, I mean, this game's going to be worth $70. It's not fun to pay more, but come on. You want to experience this for $70.
Absolutely. I cannot wait for this game. Like, this might be my most anticipated game since Breath of the Wild came out. Like, I can't think of a game more recent, like maybe, I don't know, Spider-Man. I'm a big Marvel guy, so maybe like Insomniac Spider-Man was, I don't know. I think this is probably the most anticipated game I've had in a long, long time. And
yeah,
I cannot
absolutely.
wait.
It's really crazy.
They also announced the amiibo that I talked about. It's just kind of like a standard like Link. He was in a pose that was in a statue that kind of like showed up in, I guess it was Tokyo. But yeah, it's just kind of like a standard pose. It unlocks like additional like fabric for your glider, and then a collector's edition, which is for $130, I believe, and it gives you like a poster. It gives you the base game. It gives you some other stuff. I don't know. It didn't seem like it was like an art book, some pins or badges. It didn't seem like it was actually as cool as the Breath of the Wild one, which came with like the kind of decaying Master Sword statue.
Right.
This one,
right.
I mean, the poster is one of like those like kind of steel posters, and it looks very colorful. It's just like the key art of Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I'm gonna like. I regret not buying the Breath of the Wild collector's edition back in the day, because that statue is very cool, even if it seems like it broke very easily, as if Kyle Hilliard is to be believed, because I think his broke like week 1.
Do you know how tough he is on those statues? When he's making out with it, he goes hard.
But yeah, this one doesn't seem like it has that much cool stuff that I'm gonna be like, oh yeah, I absolutely need to have this. So
yeah,
I don't know if I'm gonna drop the $130 despite how excited I am for this. But yeah, the game comes out May 12th. What letter grade are you giving this Nintendo Direct?
I think this is man. I'd say, just because I liked a lot of what I saw, I don't know if there were any big surprises. Like, I don't think I would have predicted exactly that Game Boy would be coming to Switch, but I figured eventually it would. So I give it a solid B+.
That was where I was thinking as well, because the Game Boy games are awesome. Metroid Prime finally coming out, that was great. And, it was a shadow drop as well, because it was available immediately. Yeah. And then it was we got a Tears of the Kingdom trailer. What more could you want aside from a new Mario game, which that's got to be their E3 plans, right?
Right.
Like that's my prediction for E3 anyway.
Yeah, I think that's a good one.
I guess so. Tears of the Kingdom, is that your most anticipated from this Direct?
Yeah, it would have to be.
Anything else kind of coming close at all?
Who are we kidding? No. I mean, there's little things here and there. It's like, oh, Octopath, I'm curious to check out. I love that another kind of Mario game's coming to the Switch. Yeah. Deca Police, that level 5 game. This is the thing that stuck out to me, is just level 5. They've been kind of quiet recently. They had 3 games in this Nintendo Direct.
They're just making everything now.
It's bizarre. So that's exciting for them to be back in it a big way. New Professor Layton. I think that's cool. But yeah, Tears of the Kingdom by a mile here.
Yeah, it's not even close. But I am excited for more Game Boy Advance games to come to Switch.
Yeah, that'll be a fun thing to track.
I asked some people in the All Things Nintendo channel in the Game Informer community Discord what they were most excited for, and here are 3 responses. Metroid Prime Remaster, Game Boy Advance for Switch Online. He said, this person said, I got a chuckle out of Super Mario Advance 4, Super Mario Bros. 3 being there after last All Things Nintendo, and I'm excited for Golden Sun that it is eventually going to show up. And finally, Tears of the Kingdom looks, in all caps, amazing. That's Legend of Gamer 102. And then Matt Storm, aka Stormageddon, also the editor of the Game Informer show.
That's right.
I can finally play Metroid Prime for the first time. And then Sir Phobos on the Discord said, Game Boy Advance was the highlight for me. Can't wait to check out Minish Cap and replay Ages and Seasons when those drop. I don't recall the name, but those remastered card-based combat RPG looks interesting. I don't know what he's referring to there.
Baten Kaitos.
Okay. And then we'll check out Metroid. And of course, Tears of the Kingdom looks amazing. That trailer gave me chills. I am with you, Sir Phobos. So yeah, I think that is a bow that we're going to put on the Nintendo Direct. Anything else you want to touch on before we move on to the final segment?
I think that's it. Yeah.
All right. Well, as you know, We end every episode, or most episodes, with the eShop Gem of the Week. We are not going to take a break this episode, Ben, because we're not going to skip definitive ranking, so it would feel weird to take a break and then come back for a very brief discussion about your eShop Gem of the Week. But what is your eShop Gem of the Week?
My eShop Gem of the Week is something that Nintendo shadow dropped last year, and it's called Little Noah Scion of Paradise.
Yes, I don't know much about this game. I remember it coming out, but just because the name looks so familiar, I was like, we must have talked about this on All Things Nintendo. It was not already discussed on All Things Nintendo. So yeah, tell me about this title.
Yeah, it was. I'm trying to remember. It was some direct or like a Nindy or something, and they shadow dropped it, and it just went under so many people's radars. But it's on Steam if you want to be sacrilegious for this podcast, or it's on Switch. It is from the side perspective, 2D. 2.5D, whatever you want to call it, but it's a roguelike. And you're running around and collecting these little creatures called Lilliputs, and you're kind of assembling a team and attacking with them and kind of cycling through them as you're going through and navigating the space. But the interesting thing, if you really like your Nintendo history, is it's from the same developers who made Dragalia Lost.
Oh.
Yeah, that mobile game
thing,
from
yeah,
Nintendo. Right? Yeah, that just shut down not too long ago. So it's their next project, and it's a cool little rogue game. On Steam, it's sitting at an overwhelmingly positive review. And no one really gave it the time of day, but yeah, Little Noah Scion of Paradise is the name of that thing.
I remember when that came out and I was like, oh, that looks cool. And then I never checked it out because that's probably what most people did, right? Because there was bigger news in that direct and everyone just kind of moved on. Yeah, it's unfortunate. I hate when that happens because it's just so many cool games. Like Steam is just impossible to navigate. I mean, that's what ultimately made me want to do this segment most episodes, was because there's just a billion games on Switch at this point.
Yeah.
That it's just so easy to get lost in the shuffle. So I'm glad that you were bringing this up because I am probably going to add it to my wish list. I've talked about that several times, but it's going to end up being one of those games that I just keep an eye out. And if it goes on sale, I'll probably grab it. But it's $15 right now if you are interested in checking that out. And as you had indicated, Ben, it came out last year.
That's right.
So, Ben, I think that is an episode. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of All Things Nintendo, and I'll have to have you back real soon.
Yeah, thank you. You're giving me crap for not inviting you and MinnMax stuff. This is the first invite I got to this podcast, man. Well,
we were out at a brewery around the holidays because a bunch of former Game Informer folks were back in town visiting family, and we're like, and I was saying goodbye to you, and I was like, we haven't done a podcast together. You should come on my show. And you're like, let me know when. And guess what? I let you know when.
And it was on the biggie, so thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
And thank you so much to everyone for listening. Do me a favor, if you haven't already, throw All Things Nintendo a 5-star review and hit that subscribe button. And if you want to get any questions or comments in, you can get in touch with me at allthingsnintendo@GameInformer.com or hit me up on Instagram at Brian P. Shea. And as always, you can join the Game Informer Community Discord, which is a perk for subscribing to our Twitch channel even just 1 month. Ben, where can people find you on the internet?
The MinnMax Show podcast is probably the easiest place. Otherwise, you can go to youtube.com/MinnMax, MinnMax. Either place will be just dandy.
And there's a Patreon tier for everyone, all the way up to $300 a month?
Well, look, you can't leave with that. You have to. So
there's also a $2 a month tier.
Yeah, the $2 is a sweet spot. $5 you get the bonus podcast feed. The $300 one is really interesting. Where for that one, it's like, hey, you can choose any game under the sun, and we'll play that game with you for an hour, offline, just kind of one-on-one hanging out with whoever you want to hang out with. And we've had maybe 6 people take it throughout the history of MinnMax, but it's always just fun because people just choose games that they're really passionate about. It's I'll go play Minecraft with some guy for an hour. That sounds fun. So it's a great time.
Well, Ben, because we've been talking so long, the theme song is just repeating, and that is going to lead directly into 10 minutes uninterrupted of the guy whistling. So that is our show for this week. Thank you again for listening. Take care. We will see you next time.